Thank you for joining my Zoom interview with USDA Rural Development State Director, Randy Parker. Randy, also thank you for taking a few minutes to be with us today to discuss programs that assist our rural communities here in the state of Utah, not only as we face the COVID-19 pandemic, but in general as well. And this is hitting our state in so many different ways. And we are so grateful for you taking this time to not only help my office understand some of the resources that are available so we can make them known to our constituents, but also that we can share this with others and they can see this interview and maybe be aware of some of the resources that your office has. We know that the SBA, the Small Business Administration EIDL loan program, this is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, and also the PPP program, that's the Paycheck Protection Program. They recently opened for agricultural businesses, and you've been working with our governor's office, our governor's Economic Recovery Task Force on the rural component of the rapid response team. While those businesses are not guaranteed approval when they apply for those loans, it's still important. It's still an important ability for our rural agricultural producers that they can tap into, and if they need help and need a resource. So, beyond the SBA EIDL and PPP programs, USDA's Rural Development Program has a suite of great programs that are addressing some of our most basic needs in these difficult times. So before we jump in and talk further, I'd like to tell folks a little bit more about your background and also the mission of your USDA Rural Development. So Randy Parker was appointed to the position in 2017 by the Trump administration. Randy, you bring a lifetime of leadership involvement and involvement in rural issues, in public lands, agricultural advocacy, to a wealth of background to your position. Your professional career includes 14 years of public service with the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food, where, among other accomplishments, you established an international marketing program that would take Utah food and agricultural products into new global markets. And you also held the position of Chief Executive Officer of the Utah Farm Bureau Federation in 2003, where you remained for another 14 years. Such a great organization, the Utah Farm Bureau, that we work closely with and supports many of our agricultural interests here in the state of Utah. So simply put, the mission of the USDA Rural Development is to improve the economy and the quality of life in rural America. It's an important mission and one that I'm glad that we are learning about today. And I would add, not only improving quality of life in rural America, but a strong and vibrant and healthy rural America is also important to our suburbs and our urban areas as well. So we are all in this together, and we need our rural areas to be strong. So why don't we just jump into this interview, and I have a few questions, if you wouldn't mind walking us through this. And so Randy, some of the programs that now typically service low income or economically distressed families and our rural communities are now offering 180-day loan payment deferrals without prior agency approval. So this list includes business and industry loan guarantees, Rural Energy for America program, community facilities loan, and water and waste disposal loan. Can you maybe describe what the goal and function of these programs are and who's eligible for them, and then talk about the loan deferments that are available as well?
Okay. Thank you, Congressman. First, I want to thank you for the very nice introduction. And I have enjoyed a career of service that's helped food producers and our rural communities. And I'm honored to be here with you today. Thank you, Congressman. Rural development, as an agency, I want people to know, even during these difficult times, we're open for business. We have 8 offices around the state, from Monticello to Richfield, Cedar City to Logan, and our folks are doing business. They're just doing business in a little different way. The communities in rural Utah, as you well know, with your district, often lag behind the rest of the economy, whether that's in the nation or here in Utah. Rural economies are more difficult to ramp up. Rural development has programs that are designed to enhance rural economies and make them more self-sustaining. We are in the business in the process of helping rural communities expand broadband, and that includes last mile connection for farmers and ranchers. We're partnering with Utah's Rural Online Initiative to enhance jobs and e-commerce in rural Utah. Our distance learning and telemedicine program or loan programs provide for an enhanced quality of life in rural Utah. COVID-19 has really brought into focus the importance of our expanded distance learning and access to telemedicine. I think we all recognize online has become almost a way of life, as we are here in this interview. USDA is partnering with rural communities to improve and update aging water and wastewater systems, rural hospitals, emergency response vehicles, charter schools, and so much more. USDA is working with rural businesses. That would be to rural economies are driven by tourism. So we're helping with hotels and restaurants. We're working even with dairies that want to go into the manufacture and distribution of artisan cheeses. I mean, it's exciting stuff that we're able to work with these rural communities and enhance their business opportunities. Right now, USDA is offering up to 180-day payment deferrals for any of our programs that are borrowers that are having problems in our rural utilities program, our business and industry programs, and our Rural Energy for America. The CARES Act, which was passed now, 6 or 7 weeks ago, provided an additional $100 million for our broadband program, Reconnect, to do more broadband work in rural America, and also $25 million more for our distance learning and telemedicine program to add to the $70 million we already had. So lots of good things happening from an economic standpoint, Congressman.
Thank you, Randy. And, you know, I've been talking to many of our farmers and ranchers, and I know how hard they're getting hit by this, the economics, the economic strife around the coronavirus. And many of these communities may not even have a single case of COVID-19 in their community. But, you know, when you are a rancher, and sometimes you're, or even some farmers, you get a paycheck twice a year. And if one of those paychecks happens to coincide with the time where urban areas and a lot of your buyers are shut down, that can be devastating for a lot of our ranchers and farmers. So we are so grateful for USDA and the resources that you are making available to help them. We just want to make sure that they know these resources are available and help them to tap into it. I wanted to ask, maybe taking a slightly different approach, a different angle to some of the work of USDA and some of the strife that our communities are feeling. So USDA Rural Development has fantastic programs relating to rural housing. Can you talk about the model of success around the single family housing program and how it's changed in response to the ongoing COVID-19 crisis?
Yeah, that is a really exciting discussion to be involved with. Housing is probably rural housing is probably the flagship program for USDA, and we're doing a lot of terrific things here in the state of Utah. With the economy in rural Utah as difficult as it can be, home ownership can be a challenge. So our programs are designed to help low and moderate income families to find the joy of home ownership. And I'm going to just point out an example of one of our programs. It's called Self-Help. It allows families to join together with other families. As many as 6 or 8 or 10 families come together, and they work under the umbrella of a licensed contractor to build their homes. And interestingly, that work that they do is sweat equity in the home. So what it does is it reduces the cost of their mortgage, it reduces the cost of their monthly payments, and makes housing more affordable for everyday Americans and Utahns. And it's a program that I'm very proud of. One of the first things I did when I arrived here at USDA Rural Development was went out and visited a group of 10 homes that had just finished up in the Hiram area. And those people were so excited about what they had accomplished. Plus, they made a community within that process. Those 10 homeowners that built their homes together, that put on hammers and nails and all of the things that they do in home ownership, they build a community. They didn't just build a home, they build a community. So when you think about the impact on our homeowners, whether it's in rural Utah where we work or across the state, the coronavirus is having an impact. So for our borrowers, those that are involved with single family housing, whether it's our direct loan program or our guaranteed program, where we work with banks and lenders out there to guarantee rural homes, we've provided a 60-day moratorium on evictions and foreclosures, and then an additional 180 days of forbearance if necessary after this thing starts to wane. The other thing that I think outside of our single family housing is there's a lot of families in Utah that are living in multifamily housing. And so I'm just going to touch on that really briefly. We work with those that build with people, with businesses, with property owners that build multifamily housing for rentals. And what we're doing is, for those folks that qualify, they're receiving increased value in their vouchers to help them pay their rent. And there is an eviction and penalty protection for non-payment of rent right now in those that are financed through USDA rural development. But in addition to that, we want to make sure that our property owners are taken care of as well. So we're offering them forbearance until their rent starts flowing again and they can get back on track. So we're doing a lot of things to make sure people are staying in their homes in rural Utah.
So those are some incredible resources. Not only a great program overall, and I'd love to see more of that program maybe once the world gets back to normal a little bit. But I just want to reiterate what you said. So if you have a mortgage that's financed through USDA rural development and you are having trouble paying your mortgage, you can get forbearance. No fees, no interest, no penalties. You can get a forbearance on that, a break from paying that for a kind of hit pause on your mortgage payments for a period of time. And also if you have rental properties, right, and you're not able to collect rent from tenants, you can also pause those payments, and that's a huge resource. So we would encourage people, if people have questions about that, should they contact their lender? Is that how they go about getting that forbearance?
Yes, they would contact their lender, and they're aware of what we're making available to them on both sides of the ledger, those that are paying rent or paying house payments, and helping those lenders to make sure that they're covered in this difficult time as well.
That's a great resource. That was made available through the CARES Act and now administered by USDA. Great partnership, and we appreciate your work on that, Randy. So another question, Randy, you have a long history working with our farming and our ranching community, and during this pandemic especially, you've been working, as I mentioned, with the Governor's Economic Recovery Task Force to assist our incredible SBA folks and to lead out the rapid response team. So the SBA has a COVID-19 disaster program that's right now designed for ranchers and farmers to apply for assistance. Could you shed some light on who is eligible for that program and how it's intended to assist them? That's as I said, a program designed for ranchers and farmers to get assistance in this economic crisis that they're seeing.
Yeah, that's a great question, Congressman. And I'm going to back up just a little bit and note that being a part of this Governor's Economic Recovery Task Force and then the Rapid Response Team for farmers and ranchers and rural businesses has brought together the resources of the local, state, and federal agencies to help with those communities. When you go back and you look at the CARES Act and what was provided to SBA through the Paycheck Protection Program as well as the EIDL program, there was a lot of money made available to rural businesses. But interestingly, SBA has been for more than 30 years prohibited by law from providing agriculture with disaster assistance. And I think that's probably because Congress generally acts when our farmers and ranchers are in trouble with disaster programs and with disaster legislation. But right now, this was critical to our farmers and ranchers, and they were outside of it under the CARES Act. So when Congress and the president passed the second tranche of funds, farmers and ranchers were opened up to be part of the eligible businesses for that working capital loan. Now, you know, this just underscores the importance of these farmers and ranchers to our rural economies and so forth. But you know, there's been a lot of publicity recently about how healthy our farmers and ranchers and rural agribusinesses are right now. And the concern, and we're seeing this in nightly news reports, the concern is this is impacting the American food chain, and all Americans should be concerned about that. So on April 4th, when EIDL was opened up for disaster loan assistance for farmers and ranchers, this was critical to make sure that our food supply chain stays open for all Americans. I mean, we rely on them. Only 1.5% of Americans are producing the food and fiber that we all enjoy at a great price, and we need to make sure that that stays healthy and is a healthy part of our economy.
Absolutely. You know, that has received a lot of publicity lately, and in my conversations with farmers and ranchers, they are feeling really feeling the impacts of this. So I want to just give a little bit of a shout out to the governor's economic recovery task force and the rapid response team. So, you know, we talk sometimes about the Utah way, and you hear that's a term you hear a lot. I think right now that the governor's economic recovery task force, and especially the rapid response team, is a great example of what we call the Utah way. So my office is participating in the governor's economic recovery task force, as are chambers of commerce, USDA, so many organizations across the state. And it really comes down to, you know, we aren't Republicans or Democrats, urban or rural. We are all Utahns who have a problem that we have to solve. And we come together to, whether it's the small dry cleaner or the small family farm, what are we going to do? What resources are available to them? What are the questions they have, the roadblocks they're seeing? And we all roll up our sleeves to try and solve those problems. And so I think that's been a great partnership, and we're so happy for your leadership, the wealth of experience you bring to that role, and your leadership on that. So Randy, first of all, let me thank you again for spending so much time with us. I just want to give you a chance in closing. Do you have anything that you'd like to add so people know more about the critical work that's being done by USDA Rural Development?
Well, there's a couple of things I just want to note, and thank you for this opportunity, Congressman. First is for people to know that USDA Rural Development here in the state of Utah and across the nation is open for business. We are there ready and prepared to help our rural communities, our rural citizens with their needs. The other thing I want to point out is with the changing dynamics of this virus, and it's almost changing from day to day, the most up-to-date information available from Rural Development USDA can be found on a website that's updated daily. That website is rd.usda.gov/coronavirus. And that would be where I would recommend anybody that wants to know any of these deferrals, any of these forbearance opportunities, that is identified right there.
Great, and it looks like we just popped it up on the screen so people can see that there. There's the website, and specifically related to the coronavirus is that rd.usda.gov/coronavirus. Great information.
Exactly.
So we've talked today a lot about resources available to rural Utah. for those who live in our suburbs or our urban areas who are watching this and think this may not apply to you, go to the grocery store and see, I think fortunately you can still get, I was at the grocery store yesterday here close to my house, and it can still, we still got everything we needed, but you can see, there's signs that say only one package of meat or
Yeah.
things. And so, we are really dependent on our rural areas, and we need you to be strong. We need our businesses to be strong. You talked about the artisan cheeses and the incredible products that are coming out of rural Utah that we enjoy in our suburbs. And we want those small artisan businesses to stay strong and to continue to provide us that good local homegrown product that we enjoy that's so unique. And so it's really important. We are literally all in this together. So I'm thrilled that Randy Parker was able to join today to discuss USDA rural development and its programs that are built to assist people living in rural communities, not only right now during the COVID-19 pandemic, but during normal times as well, during times of prosperity that I hope we can get back to those normal times soon. So below is a slide. I think let's put that slide up. Is this the one? This is the one we already had up. Put it back up if we can. On how to contact information on how to reach the USDA Rural Development Team. And if you have any questions on eligibility for these programs, please don't hesitate to reach out to USDA Rural Development. You can always reach out directly to my office. This is what we do, is provide this customer service to our constituents.